might be a bit of a redundant video, but I think this needs to be said. Well, Rehab Room recently made a video and he posted something which is, in my opinion, quite common. Quite common when you look at Black Pill and Looks Maxers, when they talk about ideal ratios. And one ratio in particular which I see they talk about, which is just straight up wrong when they say that this is the ideal range. So Rehab in that last video, said that he was showing a Chinese model who had a chin to philtrum ratio of 3.5. Well, I agree that is just horrendous for a woman, but he said that for women the ideal chin to philtrum ratio is 1:2, and for men it is around 2. It can be up to 2 to 2.5. Well, this is a very common misconception, to say the least. In fact, the data we have on this shows that women actually prefer a longer philtrum compared to the chin, where the most attractive is 1:2. Yes, the most masculine is 1:3, but the most attractive is 1:2. Kind of starts making sense why women like those guys who have that on the lower side, like Ian Somerhalder, instead of guys like Sean O'Pride who have a chin to philtrum ratio of 1:2.5, because 2.5 is a bit too much in terms of attractiveness. Yeah, sure, up to 3 is most masculine, but it just starts being less and less attractive. For women, it is surprisingly not low, because while men prefer a smaller chin, men also prefer a much smaller philtrum, and it turns out men actually like a chin that is about 2.5 times taller than the philtrum. So these are quite interesting findings, and these are actual studies. And this is always the problem I have had with the ranges for ideal ratios which guys use in the Black Pill sphere, is they take. And also, there's a greater problem with the rating system as well when it comes to the general population. When you take a group of people who are already models, who are chosen for looking striking, as opposed to looking the most attractive, people who are considered the most attractive in studies, ratios which are discovered to be most attractive in studies, and make your averages on the basis of that, you are always going to have a lopsided bias towards strikingness as opposed to most attractive. Now, I will not tell you just listen to normies and whichever people they say are most attractive. I'm not going to tell you to pick up some boneless soy cuck from South Korea and tell you that that is the ideal ratios. But I'm telling you, use studies like that to find your ideal ranges and averages, right? When you take a group of people from Drago to Hexam, you end up with people who are the most striking looking. And when that sample has people like Sean O'Pride, when that sample has people like Jordan Barry, of course you are going to get lopsided results. Of course you're going to think that the ideal chin to philtrum ratio is between 2.25 and 2.5, because that is the average from the faces which are considered most striking, plus the faces which you also rate highly. You take Sean O'Brien and Ian Somerhalder, and the average is around 2.25 to 2.5. But most women would prefer a chin to philtrum ratio of 2, which is exactly what Ian Somerhalder has, or 0.1 or 0.01 or 0.02 below. While Sean O'Brien has a chin to philtrum ratio of 3. So you cannot be making averages like that. Also, you cannot be making averages on the basis of celebrity halo, which is also another problem. The best way to do that is maybe using studies for your ideal ranges, and for average ranges, that is again the same problem. They use those people who are already considered striking and then take the average of those groups. You should take a number of people, let's say 1,000 random people on the street, and use the ratios they have. Now, there's another problem with average ratios which are collected from normal people, so-called normal people in studies. They do not take into account people who have overbites. They do not take into account people who are overweight. They did not take into account people who have underbites. So that is a huge percentage of the population. So the people who are getting rated 5.5, 5 to 5.5, most of them are actually 5.5 to 6. There's a zero point 0.5 point deflation in what their actual rating is supposed to be like in comparison to the general population, because you are already taking in people who are not overweight, who are not malocclused, and generally just the healthiest group of people that are taken for those surveys. So you have a lot of those problems, and then read that. I don't know, man. Like, I mean, yeah, she isn't winning any Miss Universe awards anytime soon. Rama Duaji, the wife of Zohran Mamdani, but I don't know what Rehab was on about when he said, or Wheat Waffles were on about when they said that she is the ugliest woman that like, come on, dude. She's not overweight. She is not. She doesn't have absolutely terrible ratios like the chin to philtrum ratio. Not absolutely terrible ratios in the jaw. Not terrible cheekbone projection ratios. Not terrible eye spacing ratios. Like, this is honestly. And the mid-face ratio isn't particularly bad either. It's actually 1:1. I measured. Surprising that I've measured faces more times than I've measured my cock anyways. Strangest faces, but regardless, that's a weird thing to say, but that is just true. That is just true, man. Pencil neck, yeah, of course. Nose shape is unfavorable, but nose is slim. Eyes are, well, the orbital area is kind of fucked. Let's be real, but thick eyebrows are not too long, and you can actually see this. The main problem is this. Her face is not particularly balanced in terms of the facial thirds. Like, her forehead is like way too short, but when you look at this, look at the bottom 2/3, they are perfectly balanced. That's all right. But you can see that her forehead is too short, and that is a flaw. And her lip area is certainly not great. So all of those things accounted for, and the low body fat, and given the fact that, I mean, generally though, if you take into account that a lot of women, especially in late 20s, are also obese, I would rate her, all of these things considered, somewhere between 4.5 and 4.7. 4.75 to 4.8 is average. She is slightly below average, I would say. She's slightly below average, but dude, like, no way Rehab actually said she is one of the ugliest women that he has ever seen. Because another clear flaw is, like, the reason I deduct that hard is because her cheekbones are low set and her ears are quite flared, but her cheekbones are quite prominent, which is a good thing, and her nose is slim. So she has, her eye aspect ratio is also good. The canthal tilt is all right as well, but there is a lot of upper eyelid exposure and under eyelid darkness, periorbital darkening. So all of those things combined, I cannot be rating her a 5. But saying that she's a 3 out of 10, I believe Rehab is forgetting his own scale or something. And I also agree that Zohran Mamdani mocks the shit out of it, but 3 out of 10 is a bit much.